All right, everybody. Futures just opened up, so I think a good time to get jumping in here to the Sunday focus list. But I hope you had a good weekend. Hope you're ready for what should be an interesting week on Wall Street. So take a look here at the futures. Q's pretty damn flat here, and the SPY is pretty flat as well. So heading into the week, here's what we got for open positions. Tesla, Roku, APPS, and Amazon. So those are the open positions, all of them being put credit spreads, because you know my game. But I think the major thing here I'm focusing on is just really the possibility that the market could certainly go either way here. So personally, I do think for the rest of this month here, rest of the month of April, the market's going to continue to go higher. Just the question is, as we go from point A to point B over the next 3 weeks or so, is it a continued straight shot, or do we pull back at some point? So you can make an argument for either. We talked about this a little bit in Friday's video, but if you look at the daily charts, in the daily charts is always a good gauge of kind of, let's get the 21 EMA, let's get the Keltner channels. But the daily chart is always a good gauge of, just the possibilities and the probabilities, so to say. So S&P 500 is well beyond 2+ ATR. Once we're at this point, there's a growing probability it could pull back. So you have extended daily charts, which does point towards the possibility of a pullback towards a 21, but at the same time, the weekly charts, you get some good-looking squeezes here, and those weekly squeezes are not even really firing off yet. So the Qs, if these charts can load, you get the weekly squeeze that we've talked about for the last handful of weeks here, hasn't even started firing yet. So in the short term, and by the short term, I mean the next handful of days, you could see a bit of a dip, but I do think for the rest of the month, especially as these names are heading into earnings, you could see the weekly squeeze fire to the upside. And obviously, once a weekly squeeze fires long, you can get some nice momentum. So you get the weekly squeeze for the Qs, and of course, as the Qs are squeezing on the weekly chart, you got a killer weekly squeeze here for Amazon. So it's the same discussion. On a daily chart, Amazon is certainly extended. It's made its typical 2+ ATR move, but there is the possibility that things get even crazier here with the beautiful weekly squeeze. So you got the Qs in a weekly squeeze, you got Amazon in a weekly squeeze, and then the S&P 500, we're in the process of firing a daily squeeze to the upside, or a weekly squeeze to the upside, as you can see right here. So those are the two possibilities. My opinion is that over the next few weeks, the rest of the month, I think we're going to see some continued upside. Just in the interim, you do got to take into consideration the potential, because we're at 2+ ATR across the board, the Amazons, the Googles, etc., you could see a pullback. So I think both are possible, but from my perspective, we're certainly positioned here for some more upside. So a couple of setups that I do like. So for APPS here, you got a good-looking daily squeeze. Man, these thinkorswim charts are slow. But you got a good-looking squeeze here, stacked moving averages, couple of green 10x bars, a positive histogram, and we're right on top of that 21. If you take a look at that 4-hour chart, you got a good squeeze here, setting up under the surface, right on top of that 21. So beautiful setup here for APPS. We got some April 30th expiration put credit spreads. But keep in mind, the success of this trade likely depends on where the market goes from here. So with the market extended, if we do pull back, it's probably going to drag this and everything else with it. If you do keep grinding higher, I think these are the kinds of setups that could certainly reward us well. I think there's more upside for the Amazons, the Googles, and I'm looking for a little bit more upside. But if the market does continue to grind higher, these are the kinds of setups, these nice bullish squeezes on these stocks that haven't made that 2 to 3+ ATR move. Those kinds of setups could thrive. So we got some APPS. We have got a little bit of that rowdy Roku. Same kind of setup here. Good looking daily squeeze. You're back above the 21. Little bit of bullish momentum. So it's not the cleanest setup in the world, but we took a stab at this one. April 30th expiration, put credit spreads, and just like APPS, you got a decent daily squeeze, and under the surface, we don't have a 4-hour squeeze. I thought we had a 4. What do we have here? Do we got a 2-hour? We got nothing on that 2. Do we got a 1-hour? And you kind of got a 1-hour squeeze, and I'm guessing you got a 30-minute here. But this is pretty much what I'm looking for. Good-looking daily squeezes, and if we're close to that daily 21 EMA, and you got a lower time frame squeeze right on top of the mean, that's what I'm looking to take my entry. So Google is a good example of this. You know what the daily chart looks like, but is that daily chart is squeezing, take a peek under the surface. And what you would have noticed about Google is that on the 4-hour chart, this was squeezing since mid-February. So you were in a good-looking daily squeeze. You're obviously in a really strong uptrend. You get this big of a consolidation, that big of a break in the action, it tends to lead towards these pretty outsized moves, especially when the market gets behind it. So we got some Roku, we got some APPS, and then you've got some Tesla here. So if I think for Tesla, you got the potential for that push into 700 either this coming week with the monthly expiration, but we'll see what goes here. Let's see. All right, you got the daily squeeze. This isn't the cleanest either. So, the Googles, the picture perfect setup, at least in my world, that's where I'll take my full position, which will be anywhere from, 10 to 12% of my account. On these setups that aren't as perfect, like a Tesla, like a Roku, I might risk, 5%. So I saved the capital for the picture perfect setups, and Tesla isn't one of them, but you are back above the 21. Good looking daily squeeze. You got some bullish momentum on that histogram, and then under the surface here for Tesla, let's see what we got for lower time frame squeezes. And I'm looking for lower time frame squeezes because most good, strong moves, they tend to take place right off of that daily 21 EMA. So if you can find a lower time frame squeeze right on top of that 21, you're basically building up energy there under the surface right on top of your quote-unquote launching pad. So you got a 2-hour squeeze here as well. But those are a couple of things we're focused on. I did, and this will be an interesting one. So I'll take notes, I'll document all this. I spend basically the last, 3 days of the week in the options room talking about how extended Amazon is. It certainly is extended. Talking about how extended the Qs are, Google, basically saying this is not the ideal time to get long. And based on a daily chart structure, I do believe this is not the ideal entry. But the weekly charts, this is what's going to make the next handful of weeks so interesting. You got the tale of two stories. Daily charts are extended as hell. The weekly charts, you got these giant squeezes. You're building up a crap load of energy. If there's ever a time the market is going to get even more extended, it's if you got a weekly squeeze firing. So for Amazon, I did add a little bit more there into the close. But again, I decreased position size in a big fashion. I'm only going to save that max position size for when the market is getting ready for a nice solid move off of the 21, for when the stock is doing the same thing. In this particular instance, though the weekly chart does look really good, because the daily is so extended, it's just not the ideal entry. But I did take a little bit of exposure, and on that strong move into the close, you got a little bit of profit coming in. So that's what we're rocking with. A couple of credit spreads on Amazon, Tesla, Roku, and APPS. And I think those are the major things to take into consideration. The daily charts, they're extended. The weekly charts coming out of these potential squeezes, it could certainly lead to more upside. So the futures are a little bit flat, but we got a long time till the open. So should be an interesting week. I wish you the best of luck. I'll keep you posted, and I appreciate everyone for watching. I think we just crossed about 6,000 subscribers. I really do appreciate you watching. I appreciate you tuning in. A lot of good comments. So believe me, it is always nice to see so many folks out there really dedicated to learning more about trading and trying to improve at their craft. So if I can help in any way, it's certainly a privilege. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. I'm taking off here in a bit to get into some shenanigans, but I'll talk to you soon.